Hello. Today I am excited to be here talking to the Base community. Been a big fan of Base. Actually, got really into building and using it when I started playing around with Farcaster and Warpcast and Farcaster frames, really. And since then, I've just been keeping up with everything going on, and it seems to be a very good time to be building on Base right now. So I would say Solana and Base both seem to be two of the places where there's the most creativity and activity going. So excited to be here chatting about a topic that I'm passionate about. It's essentially developer relations, or you could call this kind of topic developer education or community building. To me, it all kind of blends together from the perspective of someone that works in kind of the developer relations space. And I've decided to package this talk into just a list of things that I've learned over the past 9 or so years, and tried to highlight everything and kind of bucket into these 16 different items that I'm calling 16 things I've learned in DevRel. A little bit about me. I've been a developer for 13 years. I've worked in the blockchain space for a little over 3.5 years. I've been doing developer education in some form or fashion for about 9 years. So I've started a couple of coding schools here in Mississippi where I live. I've started a coding Meetup, which I ran for 3.5 years. I started a podcast, which I also ran for about 3.5 years. That's still ongoing, called React Native Radio. I've written 2 books, and I've been working focused on the blockchain world for, about 3.5 years. And this slide about 4 months at EigenLayer is actually outdated. I've been with EigenLayer for almost 10 months now, or EigenLabs. So really this talk, I've essentially titled it around DevRel, or developer relations, but it is about developer relations, but it also isn't, because a lot of the stuff really just applies to career building and just growing with not only working with other teams and getting jobs, but it also really has to do with growing your own presence and maybe your own ability, and just becoming a better and more efficient developer or a founder or anything like that. So these are just, I would say, life lessons. A lot of them apply to DevRel, but not all of them. So we'll just start going through these. So really the main objectives that I think that I hope people can kind of take away from this, that I wish I would have known or really understood these things, that I think would have impacted my own team success, my own career progression, and would have helped me grow my network. Because a lot of these things I learned along the way, I didn't start applying them until years into my own career. But once I started applying them, they really helped me out a lot. So one of the things that I think that is something just to always keep in mind, no matter what you're doing, is this idea of just taking action. A lot of times we get kind of bogged down in the process of overthinking things, and we make things too complicated. So for instance, you might say, oh, I have this idea and I want to build this app that's going to implement this idea. We might start looking at the different frameworks that we can use, and we might get undecided about, should we use React or Next.js, or should we use server-side rendering? And then you might start looking at CSS libraries and then designs, and then you might say, oh, well, I want to build out these 100 features. What should I do first? And then you just don't start doing anything. I think the best thing is just to say, okay, have an idea. The first thing you should do would be to start taking action towards that immediately. It just ends up turning more into a snowball effect, where you just get a lot more stuff done if you kind of think of this as a top of mind thing in basically everything that you do. One of the things that I saw Dan Romero had posted is this right here. He had said, the most common mistake I see smart people make is overthinking it. And this really, really resonated with me, to the point that I printed this out and posted it in my office. And it really, really is something that I think about all the time, because he's so right here. I fall into this trap where I overthink things and I don't take action. And the more that I take action, the more positive things come out of that. So the next lesson is, don't don't be afraid to move on. And I think I see a lot of people that get trapped into this pattern where they are essentially bound to the company that they work for, the idea that they've decided to focus on, or just something. They made a decision, they want to do something, they start doing it, and then they have essentially like 6 months down the road or 1 year down the road, maybe had like second thoughts about what they're doing, or they've learned something, or they've now found new interests that they're excited about, but they're afraid to kind of leave what they're doing now to move on to this next thing. And there's a bunch of reasons for this. One reason might be, oh, the company that you're working for, they treat you really well. Your boss is your friend. You feel like it's a comfortable work environment. You're not going to get fired, blah, blah, blah. These are not good reasons to stay anywhere. A good reason to stay somewhere is, this is where I want to be 3 years from now. That's a good reason to stay somewhere. A good reason to stay somewhere is, I wake up every day and I'm extremely excited to be working on the thing that I'm working on. And I feel the same way as I did the first day that I got this job. So if you can wake up to those two questions and say yes, then you're probably in the right place. But if not, then don't worry about leaving and finding something new. You have to remember, like, a lot of these companies, they are essentially just there to like make payroll the next week or the next month or the next year. And to be honest, most of the time it's just expendable, you know? There's also the sunk cost fallacy where, oh, I've spent 6 months doing this thing, even though I know in my heart that this isn't what I want to be doing at 6 months from now, and it's probably not going as well as I would have liked. Because I've already sunk 6 months into this thing, I'm going to keep going. When in reality, sometimes you just have to say, okay, I'm going to cut this off now and I'm going to move on to this next thing. So it's always kind of like rethinking where you are every month, every 6 months, every 12 months. For me, I typically rethink where I'm at every 12 months. Because I think, like, if I start something new, I want to give it 12 months. That's a good shot. If I decide it's not the right place for me, then I often kind of like move on. And you can kind of see that in my career progression. I spent almost 4 years at AWS, but after that, I spent 1 year at the Graph Protocol, 6 months at Celestia, a year and a half at Aave. All those places, amazing opportunities, amazing people to work with. But one day I did wake up and I was like, okay, this is not exactly what I want to be doing today. What else is out there? And there are always awesome things that are out there. Lesson 3, this is around similar to taking action. It's taking ownership. And this is more around, I would say, okay, if you're taking action, like, what exactly are you doing and why are you doing that? Well, sometimes if you're just a solo entrepreneur or you're working on your by yourself, this doesn't apply as much because everything that you do is taking ownership because you're like the only person there. But let's say you're working at a company where there's like 50 people or 60 people. This starts to be extremely valuable when you have a group of people that kind of see you taking action and taking ownership of things that make their life and their job easier. You'll be appreciated in the company. You'll often get promoted. You'll be seen as an extremely valuable person on that team. And you'll also just do better in your career, period. Most companies really, really like the types of people that take ownership. So I think taking ownership is something that I remind myself to try to keep in mind at all times. Another thing is this idea of like your online presence or your online image. This especially applies to developer relations for sure. I don't know if I would say this applies to everything. Obviously, there's a lot of areas in software where you can just be a really good coder or you can be really good at your job and this doesn't really matter that much. But if you're doing developer relations, what will often happen is, like, you're applying for a job, they go and they Google you. If you have a bunch of great blog posts up, you have a bunch of code that's open source, you've shared a lot of insightful things on your social media profile, you have a clear, easy to understand bio on your social media profiles, you have an online presence at like Stack Overflow and different places like that, then you have really, really set yourself apart of everyone else. And this is something that just happens. You know, when you apply somewhere, the first thing people do now is they just Google your name. I've seen this happen like a million places, and I know most people will do this whether they say it or not. And if you can kind of stand out by having taken your online image seriously, then you will probably stand out in the job search. But also if you're consulting and you were looking to get a job, this will help you land those clients because they will find you and you're out there teaching and talking and sharing code about the thing that you say you're an expert at, and they're going to more likely take you seriously. So what specifically might this look like in your actual online presence? One is like having somewhat of like a presentable, high quality photo if possible. This doesn't have to necessarily be any specific type of photo, but you will kind of know it when you see it. Like if you have a photo that you're using that is high quality enough to where you feel like, oh, this represents me really well. It doesn't even have to be a photo of yourself, believe it or not. It can be literally like an anime photo. You know, these types of things are very, very like broad in terms of how you can apply this. But I think having a photo represent yourself that you can use across multiple places is super important. And it is a lot harder to build a name for yourself being anonymous. There are a lot of people who've done a great job of that, though, for sure. But I think it's just a little tougher. You're making it harder on yourself when you don't have your own picture where people get to know you. They feel like they actually know you if you have a real picture. This applies especially, again, in developer relations. If you're just an anonymous coder, don't worry, none of this, I would not give you this advice either in that scenario. Having a carefully crafted bio, just explaining exactly what you do and exactly what you're interested in goes a long way. So if you apply for a job at a company that specializes in AI and like, let's say front-end React, building out like high quality UIs, if your bio says I'm a developer, then that doesn't really tell them much. But if you say I'm a developer, I specialize in handcrafted, polished design and UX, I'm passionate about UX, stuff like that, you're going to stand out for people that want that. So I think like, you know, thinking about where you want to be working, what things you want to be doing, what types of roles you want to be getting hired for, either in consulting or in your, you know, your actual job, you need to essentially say, those are the things that I'm good at. And then cross-linked and referenced profiles. So, you know, have a LinkedIn, have a Twitter, have a Stack Overflow, have a blog, and then link all those things to each other. And I would even recommend having like a pretty basic landing page for your own website. I know that's kind of old school, but it is cool when someone, you know, has a very, I would say, well put together site about themselves. And when I say well put together, that doesn't mean the design needs to be amazing. It just needs to be well structured. It needs to have some information about yourself. It could be really basic HTML without even any CSS, right? But it should just have some backlinks to the things that you've done and maybe some of the stuff that you're wanting to really showcase. The next lesson that I would point out is that there are certain things that really scale much better than other things, and I don't think we've really done a good job of explaining how scalable and how much better some of these things are than other things. An example of this is, okay, you're in developer relations, your company wants to teach developers about this new tool or this new SDK that they've created. What you'll see one company do is, okay, we're gonna go fly to Denver for Denver. We're gonna pay $60,000 for this booth. We're gonna have 6 people go out there. We're gonna sit there talking about what we're doing, and it's going to cost us like $150,000 to pull this off. And then you have another company that's like, okay, let's create the best possible video that we can possibly make that explains what we're doing and that teaches someone how to do this, and that links to a really high quality code base, and that does you know, a really, I would say, excellent job of getting this idea across or teaching this thing. The person that decides to do the video might spend $2,000 or $1,000 or $5,000, something in that range. And they will often reach 100 times more people than you will if you decide to take the approach of doing like an in-person event. So I think we're really starting to realize how much better digital content scales in reality. Like everyone kind of knows this already, right? But we see these companies that have a lot of budget that are still spending a lot of money going to these events all around the world. Not saying that that's not important to do to some extent, but I think that we haven't really understood how to optimize for this more digital scalable content. That's going to be videos, it's going to be blog posts, it's going to be code bases, it's going to be code snippets, anything that you can create and share globally and have linked on Warpcast and Twitter and Lens and all over the place, YouTube. You can reach everyone all around the world in an instant. It seems obvious, but it's not. The next thing I will say, okay, we talked about doing these things at scale. Did that mean I shouldn't talk to people in real life? No, absolutely not. You also need to do things that don't scale, especially early on. And what the things are specifically that don't scale, they are building relationships. Meeting developers, talking to them one-on-one, bottom line, building relationships, I would say. These things do not scale well. You can't do a live stream and talk to 1,000 people and feel like you know them. They might feel like they kind of know you, but they don't really feel that they know you. How do they feel like they know you? Well, you meet them and you take them out to dinner. You meet them, you go for a run together. You meet them on a 30-minute Zoom call, and you have a Telegram chat with them where you kind of like share memes with them. I don't know. There's a bunch of ways that you can do this, but none of them are, you cannot automate any of this. So the things that you can't automate, you have to still do, obviously. But these things are not around education. Like, you're not going to want to fly across the world to give a workshop to 20 people, right? Like, you might fly across the world to say, I'm going to meet 100 developers this week one-on-one, and while I'm there, I might give a workshop, right? But flying across the world to give a workshop to 20 people and then coming home is just crazy, because you could create that same video, reach 100 times more people, never leave your house, stuff like that. So I think just really understanding and optimizing for these things that scale and these things that don't scale. This also really resonates across the first and third point that I made. 1, taking action. 2, taking ownership. And 3, just starting. So I think understanding that a lot of times the biggest problem that we have in getting things done is that we don't actually start them. We have all of these bright ideas. I think really realizing, okay, every day I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do one impactful thing, or I'm going to do one impactful thing per week, depending on how much work it is. Over the course of time, you've done so much. So I'll give an example. When I wrote my book for the first time, I've written 2 books. The first book that I wrote, though, it seems so overwhelming. I'm like, oh, this book's supposed to be 400 pages. And I haven't even started, But all the advice that I'd gotten from all the other authors were like, just sit down and start writing and do 5 pages a day or do 10 pages a day. So boom, 5 pages. I do that, 10 days, 50 pages. Okay, a month later, wow, I'm almost done. Like, just from starting every single day and doing the work, it starts adding up. And you apply that to everything in life, and you just are going to be much more effective and much more efficient. So how this applies specifically to DevRel? Well, it applies in a bunch of different ways. But I think one thing is that in order to get hired in DevRel, you often have to have experience doing DevRel. But if you don't have experience, how do you get hired? Well, most of the people that I know that get hired in DevRel start doing it before they actually have a job. So they're out there creating educational content. They're out there creating open source code bases. They're out there giving talks. They're out there essentially doing DevRel on their own. And then someone that is hiring for that position spots them and like, oh, they're doing a great job. I would love for them to work for my company full-time. Boom, they're hired. But you can't expect to kind of get hired to do this type of line of work for the most part. At least it does happen sometimes, but it's much harder without actually having some track record of doing it. And in order to gain that track record, you can just go out there and start doing it on your own without permission from anybody. And one thing to keep in mind is, like, over time, the quality of your opportunity just continues to grow. So what this means is, like, the first job you get might not be the best job in the world that you want, but having 6 months or 12 months of experience at the first place that just gives you that shot will allow you to step up. And you can stay at this company, maybe they'll give you a raise, or you can now move on and get a better role. And then this just starts compounding, and you get better and better roles the longer that you're here in DevRel, as long as you keep doing the work. So for me, the first role I got, in the Web3 space was an amazing group of people. It was awesome, but it was also the only place that would hire me at the time. So, you know, it was overall amazing, but it probably wasn't like my first choice, right? Like if I could have chosen anywhere in the world to work, would I have chosen this place? Maybe not. But at this point in my career and a lot of people's careers, you know, after they've been doing this for a while, you do kind of have that choice. You kind of get to choose where you would like to be. Lesson 8 is putting yourself in others' shoes. So if you're out there doing like DevRel work and someone comes to you with a question, it's pretty easy to be so caught up in your day-to-day work that you are just overwhelmed and you just ignore this message, right? Because you have 100 other messages on Telegram and you keep moving on. Or you might be very frustrated because you've had a bad day and this person isn't that important because they're not really like maybe going to be building on your product, and you just move on. Or someone comes and talks to you and they're very junior and you know that they're probably not going to maybe build anything that's you know important right now, so they're not that important to you and you just don't take them seriously. But in reality, like even every one of those opportunities was an opportunity to kind of build a long-term relationship. All those new people that are coming to you 5 years down the road, a year down the road, are going to have grown a lot. And you don't want to be the type of person that just is only giving your time and attention to maybe the people that you feel you can get something out of. It needs to be like a give and take type of relationship with pretty much everyone. So even if you don't have anything that you can help with someone, you know, don't leave people hanging. Respond to those people. Say, hey, you know, I'm sorry, but I don't think I can help you, but check out this resource, go and do a little bit of work on your own and find something to help them out. Over time, you're going to end up growing a massive network of people that are cool with you, that you're friends with. And then down the road, you know, those relationships will ultimately start paying off. Lesson number 9, build in public. I can't really emphasize how big of a deal building in public is in terms of how it's helped so many people's careers. This isn't just in DevRel, this is pretty much anywhere. If you look at like all of the open source projects that have like really taken off, a lot of, for the most part, those founders are out there sharing their code in public and they're talking about what they're doing. And I think just having this really, this approach of like building in public and everything that you do is just a good, I would say, life philosophy almost, to be in this space, not only in DevRel but just a developer in period. That is kind of like wanting to be an outward facing person. Obviously, if you're not wanting to be outward facing and like getting, you know, building your network, then this probably doesn't apply at all. This does apply for people that are looking to kind of grow their network. Yeah, lesson number 10, this is very much applying to developer relations, but repurposing content is something that a lot of people don't do really well enough. In fact, there's only a few people I know that actually really do this well. The idea here is that, okay, I have this great idea around building this example application that does this really cool thing that I think is going to impress a lot of people. So I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do a video about this, and I'm going to share the video, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. When in reality, what you've just created is a very high value thing that can be shared in like 10 different ways. So you've created this video in this code base, and you've shared this video about it, right? So what else can you do with that? Well, you can turn that into a conference talk. You can turn that into a bunch of shorter tweets, kind of going into individual sections of the code, explaining your thought process and like what's happening there. You can turn that into a blog post. You can turn that into a Twitter Spaces. You can turn that into an interview, a live stream interview. You can turn that into another video. You can kind of like take that long form video and maybe shorten it up and just say, hey, we're just going to cut down to like the only thing that is the end goal is like, this is what I built, and then we're just going to link to the code base. So there's just a lot of ways that you can kind of repurpose this content. And believe it or not, like what we think is like, oh, I created something and I tweeted it out. That's it. Everyone saw it. But in reality, when you tweet something out, like 5 or 10% of your followers actually see it. So even if you just tweet the exact same thing out 6 weeks later or 4 weeks later, you're going to reach a whole new like group of people. So just keeping that type of stuff in mind and realizing that you can get a lot of like life out of something that you've created. That's great. And so repurposing it. This applies to, you know, everything in life. Consistency. If you do something once, you might get discouraged because no one saw it or no one said anything about it, and you feel like you failed, or you did try something, it didn't work out. But I think just doing things over and over and over and over just has this compounding effect that's hard to kind of explain, but it's hard to deny also. Everyone kind of acknowledges that consistency is one of the most important things, you know, in life, especially in career-wise. Another thing that I've learned that I wish I would have applied more of is around collaboration. So with collaboration, I'm not talking just about, oh, I'm gonna like announce some partnership with like some company that you see in the blockchain space, but in developer relations, it's kind of more about building your network. So when you collaborate with someone, you might have 20, like, I don't know, let's say you have like 1,000 followers, and this other person has like 1,000 followers. Your 2,000 followers don't really cross each other for the most part. But when you get together and you do something, you're sharing something and they're retweeting it, and then they're sharing something, you're retweeting it maybe, right? So you're kind of like cross-pollinating. And if you do that over and over and over, you're now reaching like 100, 200, 300 new groups of people that you wouldn't have, you know, really gotten to before. So the study of collaboration is more about like, how can I reach into these other audiences of people and maybe talk about the thing that I like to them and see if any of them like it, and vice versa, giving people the opportunity to come into your network as well and kind of talk about the things that they're looking to do. So this is cool because not only are you able to like reach new people, but also you're often able to have new interesting content that teaches them something that you wouldn't have been able to provide anyway, because maybe that's not your domain, but this other person that you're collaborating, that is their domain. Lesson 13 is reevaluating like often. And this ties into one of the other ones that I mentioned earlier around like not feeling stuck, you know, what you're doing. So just rethinking like, okay, I've decided to take this new approach. I've been doing it for a month. I'm going to stop a month later. Okay, is this working, or should I rethink this approach that I'm taking? Because technology obviously moves fast, but blockchain and AI is making this move even faster. So things are moving very fast, and often you can take advantage of something that is happening right in front of you by just realizing that the thing you're doing now isn't maybe the best thing, and you're going to now jump onto this new thing that's doing much better. And then this is my favorite lesson, I think, that's really helped me. It's to treat like every single day like it's my first day. So if I would have looked back, there was a time where I was really struggling to get a job, right? So I was like applying all over the world, not over the world, I was applying all over the United States for any place that would hire me, and I could never get that job. But when I finally got the job, I was so excited. Like I was literally never been happier in my whole life as when I got that job. And a week or a month goes by and you're showing up for work every day, and you kind of lose that excitement, right? Because you're now bogged down in your day-to-day work. You have meetings. Oh, I have to stay up late to fix this thing because the deadline's tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. But if you kind of rethink, if you just rewind like a month earlier, wow, like I was so happy and so excited. I was so motivated. Like what happened to that excitement? If you can kind of somehow capture that and apply it to every single day of your work, you are just going to be you'll just be excellent at everything you do. And everyone around you is going to notice that. They're going to be like, wow, this person is super passionate. This person really loves what they're doing. And you're going to truly be passionate. You're going to truly love what you're doing, because you're going to think back to that same day when you had that first opportunity that got you where you are today. And that just takes you so far in life. At least it has for me. And I can literally turn the switch sometimes where I'm at work, I'm depressed or something, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I don't know, like there's a bunch of excuses I could have. But when I think back to applying the same life lesson, I just realize, oh, I am lucky, I'm fortunate I'm in one of the best positions that I could possibly be in. I've worked my ass off to get here. I should, realize like, what I have here. And it changes your whole perspective, but it also changes how well you do in your day-to-day work. At least for me, it does. And I think this, it does for a lot of other people as well. And there's this song that essentially is from Jay-Z called My First Song, I think. And it's essentially just this whole idea embodied into a song. That's one of my favorite songs. All right, so we're almost done now. Lesson 15 is be helpful regardless of the return. This is about building relationships, but it's also just about, like, I don't know, karma almost. Like if someone comes to talk to you and you only treat them as transactional, you're just not going to have a good time. So like if someone comes to you and you're like, oh, I want to build this thing, or I have this question, and you're like, oh, there's nothing I can get out of this, I'm just going to ignore this person. Then, I don't know how to explain it, but if you instead say, okay, let me think about this, and you go and you try to do some digging, and even though it's not the thing that you're specialized in, you might be able to provide them with something, right? That will turn into a friendship or a relationship. And over the course of a year or 5 years or 10 years, you're going to end up having so many great relationships that end up going places you would never have guessed. So just realizing that you can help people regardless of the return is just something to keep in mind in your day-to-day. And this applies to the next lesson, which is just playing long-term games. Short-term games are not good. Long-term games are good. That's a really good question. I think who does an extremely good job of this is Jesse Pollock. He's always very positive. He's always uplifting. But he's also very, very straightforwardly focused on base only. And I think everyone has their own approach and their own style. I think for me, what a lot of people resonate is that, like, I truly try to be myself for the most part, where I share things sometimes that have nothing to do with work. Sometimes I feel like I'm oversharing and it's very awkward to say some of the things that I say. But at the same time, I don't want to just be, okay, so Jesse founded, I guess, Base, the network. So that's his thing. Like, but for me, like, I care a lot about my job, but it's not the only thing that I'm doing, right? So because of that, I feel like it's not authentic of me to only talk about my job. And I feel like I'm just a shiller. I'm like, oh, I'm just shilling the shit like over and over and over. So for me, I feel uncomfortable taking that approach. And I think everyone is going to have their own approach. So the answer to that, in my opinion, is just kind of, it depends. But I think if you try to stay true to who you are and just be yourself, then it's probably a good technique, just being yourself and not try to be like someone that you're not. So, and that's it. These are some of the things that really, really, I think, if I would have started applying to my day-to-day life as a developer and someone that's in developer relations and developer education early on, it would have gotten me a long way. But I'm hoping that you can apply these and start using them on your day-to-day and they improve your life.